Hello and welcome back to Writing with Witches, the podcast where two witches talk about writing books. And I'm really low energy today. So I'm Leona Urbanski. My debut novel is coming out April of next year is the plan. And yeah, my co-host is
I'm also very low energy and sick. So I am Nicole Autumn. I am the author of the Secret Society series. My last book in the series should be coming out hopefully the end of this year. It may change as revisions are going on, and now I've been smacked with a sickness yet again. Um, so yeah, book news.
I feel like I need to insert the gif here or just the down with the sickness for both of us at this point.
Yeah. Um, Again,
Dragon keeps eating
we
my
should be
hair.
sponsored by Hall's cough drops because I will be using them a lot in this episode.
Agreed. Real quick before we go into book news, what we're talking about today, because I totally spaced on, saying what we're talking about today, is we're talking about setting. Specifically because we are both fantasy authors, we are talking about fantasy settings. Um, yeah, and we'll run from there after book news. So do you have any more book news besides what you just said?
Um, I am up to chapter 40 of revisions, and I still have, I think, like 14 or 15 chapters still left because I keep adding. So, I mean, this book, I want to tie up all the loose ends, and I need to. It was going too fast in the end, so I have to add more to slow it down a little bit. I'll be muting myself quite often. Um, Book news for you.
Um, I have 16 chapters left in the revisions, which for my thick boy is getting down to the wire on me. I'm kind of hitting the turning point where the energy's starting to ratchet up to get us to the climax. So once I get past this hellscape known as grad school,
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to be able to really focus on that. My goal was to have revisions completed by the end of the month. I'm going to try. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm going to try.
We got 5 days.
Got 5 days, 16 chapters. We'll see.
It's going to be tough, that's for sure.
Well, I got to try and hold myself to the goal. And if I don't meet it, I don't meet it. And but hopefully I'll have gotten a lot done. So, um, I have officially contracted Alex for more art for the Kickstarter. The three brothers and Druce are going to be getting brought to life, which I'm very excited about. I
I'm so
cannot wait to
excited.
see it. I did send out the newsletter at the almost end of October. I know this episode is airing mid-November, but there was a newsletter last month.
It did go out.
It did go out. Um, yeah, beyond that, and the rough timeline I gave last time, I haven't really hit any other milestones. So sadly,
Yeah. Just revising.
yeah, I just keep going, man.
Yeah.
You just
I'm
got to keep chugging
hoping.
at it.
I don't know. Like, I wanted to have my revisions done by the end of the month, and I don't know if it's going to be happening, but we'll see. I really have to kick my butt into gear this week, and of course, I have a laundry list of appointments this week, too. So, just my luck.
Yeah, I feel that. I have stuff all through this week as well, so I'm like,
Yeah.
so. But anyway, enough about us griping about not having the time to do revisions.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we're focusing on fantasy because that is what we write. Specifically in this podcast, we're going to be comparing what we call high fantasy versus low fantasy. And I'm not saying that as in like highbrow fantasy versus low. No. What we're talking about is the amount of fantasy within the book. So, high fantasy, classic example is Tolkien with Lord of the Rings. Large amount of fantasy elements in that book. Low fantasy, honestly, I'm going to pull Secret Society series to me because that's a low fantasy because it's a lower um, percentage of magic in the book. It's definitely there. It's definitely an integral part of the story, but it's not taking over the entire book. So,
Yeah. I would also say that when it also determining low fantasy could also be considered urban fantasy as well, because it is pulling aspects from our world and not urban as in a urban like city setting. Urban fantasy just means it's in our world. It involves Earth. So low fantasy
it
could also
involves
be
Earth.
it involves actual Earth, like our countries and stuff. Um, so that could be another term for low fantasy as well. So, um, and I would say the factors of what classifies a fantasy to begin with is number one, most fantasy novels, if not all, I would say, probably have some sort of magic in them. Even if it is as little as, someone doing a spell or having a potion or something versus, I mean, I don't know. I can't think of anything right off the bat. I don't know. Harry Potter, for example, where it is just dumps magic on you 24/7. Um, that would also be considered a fantasy novel.
Yeah. Even though it takes place in our world, I would agree with that
I mean,
entirely.
a Hogwarts is it's kind of nuts.
Its own world.
Yeah, it is definitely its own world. Um, and then there's also, the alternate history in like high fantasy and fantasy novels where they have a whole other history that is not included in what we have. And I feel like what we're reading, Eye of the World, is a good example of that, because I don't read a lot of high fantasy, but in that there is a whole history that you get tidbits of throughout reading. Like, you learn about people of certain areas, and so his fantasy novels typically have their own history behind the novel, and most likely you will read about that at some point.
And I will also say that a lot of these worlds, they have elements of Earth. There are similarities enough so that the reader has some kind of understanding of it. And then the second difference I will say is usually you're going to get these in like more historical, I'm going to say medieval Renaissance times of our world is what I would classify as fantasy. But, and this is a whole different subject, but I'm just putting this differentiation in. If it's set in the future, typically that's going to be classified as science fiction versus fantasy.
Also,
I'm
it could be
sure there are definitely
dystopian.
overlaps out there. Dystopian. Definitely could be overlaps out there, but that is to me one of the more defining factors between the two. Is it set in like a past version where it's a low industrial level world, or is it the higher tech knowledge? And to me, that's the difference between fantasy and sci-fi. So I just wanted to make sure we put that in there. We aren't ignoring sci-fi, but that's not what we're talking about today.
Yeah. And it's also different than historical fiction, because even though fantasy I'm not gonna say all, but most fantasy tend to have the medieval type landscape. We're fighting with swords and crossbows. I would say anything up until modern day. Modern day and back would be fantasy, and then, like you said, forward sci-fi. But it's not historical fantasy or historical fiction, because historical fiction tends to be placed in real life time frames. So think World War II, World War One, Revolutionary War, or Titanic, for example. They're typically take place during real life events, and even if it isn't around like this huge catastrophic happening, or something that's really to write home about, it's still taking place during a specific time era, and they'll let you know that through either the way they talk or the way you know society is working. I mean, all of Jane Austen's is set in like Regency time frame, so that would be historical fiction. So there's another big distinction of fantasy versus some of the other genres as well.
I think a lot of, and I'm sure there's some out there that disagree with me, but I think also a lot of the romance novels that are placed in this world in the historic, I would classify as historical fiction as well, because they are also upfront. They're like, this happened in this time period, but these people didn't really exist, kind of thing. Lindsay Sands is the biggest example of that for me because she sets it, she sets she has books set in the Regency era as well as the Scottish Highlands and that kind of era. So, a lot of historical romances I would place into that historical fiction category, where it's
Yeah.
not necessarily around a huge major world event, but it is definitely set in those time periods.
Yeah. It could be just certain time frames that we it could be Edwardian, it could be Victorian, it could be Regency, these different time frames. That's maybe not catastrophic events like I listed off, but those were like the first ones that came to mind. Um
Yeah.
Also, another thing that sets fantasies apart, typically there's mythological creatures in them, whether that is, centaurs and cyclopses, or, any of the mythological creatures you hear from like Greek mythology, or there's, all number of creatures, plus the ones that people make up. Um, and that, I mean, I feel like that's a big dead giveaway if there's like mythological creatures, dragons, for example. Um, yeah, then you're reading a fantasy novel.
Maybe. It's just a tiny tip. It's just a little tip that you're in this genre.
Yeah, if you're reading about dragons or basilisks, there's a high chance you're reading a fantasy novel.
Yeah, it's a possibility. Just saying.
um so with that, there are distinctions also from obviously just fantasy reading in general, but from high fantasy and low fantasy. So we're going to talk about high fantasy first, which Leona has a lot of experience with because I was far too lazy to write a high fantasy novel. Um, so if you want to start on these points, I'll let you do it because I've only read them.
So, 9 times out of 10, a high fantasy novel is going to be set in a completely different world. Um, and one of the reasons for that is a big thing of high fantasy is world building. And while you can definitely build a world within a world, like a secret world within Earth with a portal or something, oh, damn, I can't remember his name. The Unicorn Chronicles, Robert McColville, I think is his name, and he did a Portal Fantasy where he literally drop the character into another world, and that he was doing world building that way.
Mm-hmm.
But that's we're talking about that later. But anyway, so you can definitely do that, but you're typically going to be finding these books set in a totally different world. Fire magic is set in a different world. This is why fantasy novels have maps, because you don't know where you're at.
No.
um and hand in hand with that, you don't know where you're at. These worlds are not familiar to you. That is why we have all of this world building. Every author, I think, does world building a little differently. I One of my big things with world building is I try to give you the clues about the world through everyday tasks and everyday jobs and their dialogue. I very rarely will just take a good chunk of a page to give you exposition. If I'm dropping exposition, it's usually a character saying it for the benefit of somebody else.
Yeah.
Um, versus just saying, this is the history of.
Yeah. Yep.
As Nicole is finding out with Robert Jordan.
Yeah. I don't love the giant info dumps. Um, so I am noticing that in high fantasy novels, they do like to just explain. And Robert Jordan seems to explain everything. He is someone that wants you to visualize down to the freaking bush sometimes, or the rock, or the boulder, which sometimes it can be a little overwhelming. But I will say with yours, like I said, I appreciate your world building because you do it through every day. Showing they have magic through, you know, for example, pulling water out of their hair after a shower, or their clothes after having to wade through a river, or so things like that, where you're showing us how magic is used or showing us the world building without just saying, here's the history of do, and like just rambling on and on about whatever is happening or information you need in exposition and info dumping. Yeah. So there is that. The authors do it differently. I really appreciate the way Leona does it. It's more digestible and easier for me to like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And you give it in places that make sense as well. Like when you need to know it, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
I do have to ask this, and I don't know why I never have. You actually read the Lord of the Rings novels?
No, I have not.
Okay, you would not enjoy it, because if you think Robert Jordan is bad, Tolkien, I could
I've
not
heard.
actually read it. I had to listen because I could zone out.
Yeah. So I've heard
The
that,
exposition dumps.
yeah, I've heard that his is probably one of the top world building type books where he just over explains sometimes. So, and that's what I'm finding is sometimes it's the over explaining of what's going on. Where I, and I'm a very visual person, don't get me wrong. But when someone has to explain something so thoroughly, I'm like, okay, I can see it. You don't have to over explain it. Can we move on, please? um, but
So yeah,
I will
world building.
say I may catch some shit here. I've never really been a big Lord of the Rings fan. And for a while
That's fair.
I wasn't I don't know. I think it's just the movies. They're kind of corny a little bit with the
Oh yeah.
dialogue and stuff. And it's my husband's favorite series. He loves those freaking movies and he can sit there and watch them and sometimes he'll be like, "So what do you want to do? Watch Lord of the Rings?" I'm like, "Don't you dare put those long ass movies on."
I love that.
So, yeah, I'm not the hugest fan. I can see the appeal. The movies, on the other hand, a little too corny for me.
All right. Well, now that we've clarified that, it's to me, the world building definitely has a variety of how people do it. I was always told to show and don't tell.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was criticized so often by my creative writing teacher about my fantasy settings that that is the path that I went. I tried, there's very little world building that isn't explained through a character versus Jordan or Tolkien. I will say a good author that is kind of the middle ground of that is Kristen Britton. She's coming to mind right now because I did just finish her latest book. There is definitely some exposition dumps in there, but she phrases it in the narrator's thoughts and she's thinking about it, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
just straight up info dump kind of thing. It's related to what she's thinking about, to what she's doing, um, so that you understand why she's doing what she's doing. So I think that's kind of a good middle ground between what I do and what Tolkien does.
Yeah.
um, we'll see what you all think when you read my book. I'm just going off of what Nicole has said right now and what I've attempted to do.
Yeah.
So,
No, and let me tell you, yours is going to end up being a pretty thick ass book. And I
mhm.
remember the first time I read it actually really quickly, if I remember correctly. Like, I want to say less than a week. I just like literally sat there and I was just like eating it up, you know? So, and it's funny because my husband's now reading a Brandon Sanderson book while I'm
Oh,
reading
good.
Robert Jordan. And he goes, if I finish my book before you do, we're going to have problems. I'm like, the world
I am
building is
this
just so
close.
much.
I am this close to finishing Eye of the World.
How close are you?
I'm about 100 pages from the end.
Okay. So, I want to say I was like at 570 something when I last looked. So I'm not too far off behind you.
You're getting there. You're getting there.
I'm getting there, but it has been a struggle. So I'm thinking the rest of them I may not be able to read. I'll have to listen. So that way I can listen and just
That's
like
fair.
do other things. Um and then I think I would get it done faster.
That's fair. So anyway, off on our tangent. But going back to high fantasy, it's okay. I was right there with you. We were both going way off somewhere. I don't know where.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
I think we were talking about the lots of world
un-
building.
yes, yes. So and related to that is that all of this world building means it's not familiar to the reader. It is something new. It is something different. Things do have to be explained so you understand why this person is doing what they're doing. I actually just had to. Alex is beta reading Fire Magic for me, and she was like, "Hey, I have this question about this," and I was like, "No, okay, this is what this is." I was like, "Thank you for bringing it to my attention. I'll make sure to address it." So that, and she's like, "Oh wait, no, you did just address it in the next scene. I just hadn't gotten there yet."
That I have
Like,
noticed
okay,
that does
well then I don't
happen,
have to do
yeah.
that. So yeah, it's high fantasy authors. We do have to make sure the readers understand why what is happening is happening. Um, and kind of tied into that is in a lot of high fantasy books, magic is a foundation. There's definitely exceptions to the rule. I would not say that Game of Thrones is has a foundation of magic. There is definitely magical elements. There is definitely things that happen, but that is not one of the core pieces of the novels.
Yeah.
Now the prequel, um, God, what was the name? Book of Fire and Blood, I think, is the prequel that he did with the Targaryens. That found magic has is a foundation on that one. But I think by the time Game of Thrones books came around, the magic had kind of died out a little bit. So it's less of a big factor. But most fantasy novels are going to have some kind of magic in the foundation of it. Definitely has magic in the foundation of the Eye of the World. In Tolkien, there's definitely lots of magic, especially with Gandalf in there. I'm trying to think of other books. I'll go back to Green Rider. There's definitely foundation in magic in the Green Rider series and in Chronicles by McColville. Any high fantasy you bring to me, I'm probably going to be able to find some element of magic that's in the foundation. Again, exceptions to the rule, definitely out there, but everyone that comes to my mind off the top, Dragonlance, Mercedes Lackey Valdemar, her Elemental Masters, it's all has magic in the foundation, and these are all high fantasy series. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I would say those
that's
exceptions,
kind of
like you said with Game of Thrones, their exception is the mythological creatures. There's dragons,
mhm.
there's the White Walkers. I think that's what they're called. I haven't watched it in a really long time or read the books. So, and I don't want to read the books because I know that the last one isn't out yet and I wouldn't want to wait. Um,
That's fair.
so yeah, but theirs is also very like medieval fantasy political. The big thing is who's going
Mhm.
to get the Iron Throne. Um, but yeah, that one would be probably one of the exceptions. But the magic would be in the creatures, I guess you would say.
Yeah. Yeah, because once Daenerys catches the dragons, that's definitely a large factor
Yeah.
in with the mythological creature being there. And to me, that does put magic as a little bit of a foundation in that book. Now that you mention it, I was just thinking of more the political aspect is the biggest thing
Yeah.
about it in my mind, for
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, for
So
sure. Because the whole thing is Game of Thrones. Who's going to sit on the Iron Throne? And they're all just
yeah.
fucking going nuts over that thing.
Uh, Full disclosure, I have read the books. I have not seen the series. I tried to watch the series. I could not get through it. It bored me so much.
I would
I was so
say,
bored.
I feel like they pushed the sex aspect of it really hard in the beginning. And it's like, I think that was to capture the male watchers because it wasn't later on into the series where they kind of like got rid of that and phased that out to where it was, okay, now everyone's fighting over the throne and they're doing the backstabbing and the plotting and the, yeah. But the first like two, I want to say at least the first two seasons, it was very sex heavy where you're just like, okay, not every scene needs to have someone banging in it. Okay.
I don't think it was even that. I was just like, okay, they're having sex, whatever. I was just like, let's move on to actually part of the story that has momentum moving forward, you know?
Yeah. No, 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 for sure. Yeah.
So, but
Um,
anyway, I think
yeah.
unless you had more to add to high fantasy.
Um, no, I mean, I think you pretty much covered it. The big thing just being, the readers don't know the world and there's just a lot of explaining, like you said. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that would bring us to our
I think
witchy
that,
tip.
yep.
Which
We're
is
out of sync today, man.
we are. I'm tired. You're tired. It's been a long day. I'm sick. Ugh. It is what it is, Sometimes you have those days.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So witchy tip.
So which witchy tip is changing of the seasons. Oh my god. Um as we are about to hit Samhain, right now, when this comes out, it will be halfway through November. But Samhain is literally 5 days away at this point. And we're seeing the changing of the seasons. I literally sent Leona a picture of the leaves outside my house. And they're all like bright orange and red. And I'm like, oh my God, look at it. um, so I think taking time to respect the changing of the seasons as a witch is always nice because in with the changing of the seasons, it may not just be actual seasons. It could be the seasons of your life. Things change, nothing stays the same in seasons wise or in our lives. So taking time to kind of just respect that and just take it in. Fall is my favorite time of year, so I have no problem in just chilling outside and just zenning out and just enjoying the outside. Um, so yeah, I would definitely say respect the change is a good place to start.
Yeah,
Um,
and definitely respecting the change, especially for like a baby witch, is definitely, I think, a good place to start. Even if you don't um, want to go with the more formal holidays that a lot of pagans have delineated. That doesn't mean you can't respect the fact that you can see the seasons changing and coming. Um, Also, real quick, if you're watching this and you see me constantly shifting and moving, I was cleaning a shit ton of horse stalls earlier and my back is killing me. So I apologize. I can't get
yes,
comfortable in this chair. Anyway, so yeah, I think regardless, if you're any kind of nature witch at all, you're going to be feeling these changings of the seasons. So whether you want to celebrate with a formal holiday or not, or you're not tied down to any of that, um, but you can't help but see that. And I think to honor and respect that is a big part of being a witch, in my opinion.
yeah. We all live on the earth and the earth changes and it's kind of hard not to see it, you know? But like you said, you brought up, celebrating the wheel of the year essentially. You have your solstices and your equinoxes, and then you have the ones like Imbolc and Mabon and fire festivals and all this stuff. Um, you could celebrate that and take the time to learn about each one. I know in the beginning, I kind of I felt like brain slow down. When I was learning, the wheel of the year came up a lot in how witches celebrate the rotating of the year. Um, and it is also very prevalent in Wicca. They do a lot with the wheel of the year. Some people celebrate, some people don't. But that is another way to celebrate, the changing of the seasons and just getting in tune with the cycles of nature and how things work. Even if we are not the most keen to see it, because say you do live in, California, where it is summer all the time, basically, except during winter, and then you get your 60-degree weather. Um, you don't know what a real winter looks like unless you live like Northern California. So you wouldn't understand, the pine trees and snow and all this stuff. So there also are limitations to where you may live, to where you may not be able to see all the changes. But if you do live there, it is very easy once you start noticing to get into the habit of working with nature in the changing of the seasons. Damn, that took my brain a long time to get that out.
But it was very eloquent. Well done.
Well, thank you. My brain was really like, okay, let's slow it down and get this out, man. Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and like I said, you're not tied down to the wheel of the year or the fire festivals or the solstices and equinoxes. But if you're looking for a guideline on when you think you should celebrate what other people consider markers of the changing of the seasons, these are good places to start. And if you're looking for community, that's where you're going to find a lot of these. A lot of community is going to be finding people that celebrate these holidays and seeing if they're throwing a party that you can be invited to, or there's groups in some of the cities that it's an open invitation to come to whatever ceremony or ritual they're doing for that holiday. Um, So to me, the changing of the seasons and these holidays has more than anything helped me find community as well. I mean, obviously, first and foremost is respect the seasons and the change, but it's also helped me find some community.
Yeah, for sure. If you can find, and I would say a good place to look if you aren't sure, go to your local metaphysical store. You'd be surprised. If there's more than one, I can almost guarantee you at least one of those stores throws some kind of celebration for the wheel of the year, whether it's the solstices or the equinoxes or even one of the like Maybon or whatever. That would be a good place to start if you are looking for community that is local. Um, Go to your local metaphysical stores because I know I haven't gone to any since I've moved to this area of Virginia, and I found one. I'm looking for like little chime candles because I apparently lost all mine or what, I don't know. Um, and I was looking for a green damn candle and I couldn't find one to save my life. um, but I had a local metaphysical store and they have a situation set up that I think they're celebrating on the 28th. They're going to celebrate Samhain, and it had like over 50 people saying that they were attending. So if you want community for that purpose of celebrating the wheel, the turning of the year or whatever, I would suggest starting there. That's a good place. So that is one way to celebrate. But if you are solitary and you decide, you know what, maybe I'm not ready for that, because that's a huge step in getting in the community. There's all kinds of ways to celebrate, and there's resources online and whole books written on ways to celebrate each Sabbath, technically is what it's called. Um, so yeah, there's so many ways to celebrate. Um, so like
Yeah,
for
we're not going to go
Samhain,
into all of that.
yeah, I was just gonna say for Samhain, for example, because it is Day of the Dead type stuff, you feast and you leave out your ancestors' favorite foods and stuff. So, um, okay, was there anything else we wanted to say on the witchy tip?
No, no, I think we covered that. We're not going to go into every holiday and every way to celebrate every holiday because that is like a whole episode arc in and of itself, not just a
Yeah,
witchy tip.
yeah. There are tons of videos and stuff out there, so if you guys wanted to look that up, that would be a good place to start. There's videos, there's books, there's whole series all over the place. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
So that takes us back to low fantasy.
Yeah, which is where I tend to write in. um, so with low fantasy, most of the time it is set in our world, or it could be portal type fantasies, where your characters are still from Earth. Earth still plays a role in your storytelling, but they could go off to another world. But it is not a permanent situation. You may not dive real deep into the world building there, because they're not meant to stay there. They're there for a little while to do something and then they come back. So that is where I would say that is where the huge difference is between high fantasy and low slash urban fantasy. Would be that the world setting, like our world, still plays a big role in the overall storyline or the plot, I guess you could say, is it's still here. Um, so yeah, I hope you guys did not just hear that door slam.
I didn't
my
hear it.
children, my children are upstairs arguing, and I heard a friggin' door slam real hard. Children,
Children.
yeah. Um, and with that, magic in low fantasies, typically magic ends up being secretive or hidden, or it could even be like forbidden in certain books, right? So, for example, in mine, it is a secret society. It is something that they do not do out in public. It is something that is very kept among themselves, and only a select group of people either do magic or are even around to be able to see it happening. So there is still a foundation of magic, but it is secretive. Not everyone has it, and it is like a select group. So that's where I think the difference is between, high fantasy and low fantasy. I mean, like you said, you did point out that Harry Potter is technically low fantasy, which would, the whole muggles versus, the wizarding world, which I know a lot of people don't like the author. Fair. But it's an example that I can think of right offhand.
Example.
It's an example. And that's where I tend to typically read too, is like low fantasy.
Is Zodiac Academy low fantasy?
Uh,
Or is it a portal?
it's technically, I would say, portal fantasy, because they do start out on Earth. Um, so technically, they are from Earth. They grew up on Earth, and then once they turn 18, they go to this world that is essentially the same as ours. So that's, I guess, yeah, it would be considered low fantasy. It's basically our world with different names. So, like, instead of a Ferrari, it's a Ferrari, which we brought up once.
I will never forget that now.
Yeah. So, yeah, they have a lot of fun names for things, but yeah, it's technically a low fantasy. And a lot of the other books that I've read in the past where magic is involved, I mean, a lot of what's common now is technically low fantasy. That seems to be like on
Yeah,
everyone's.
especially with all the dark academia stuff, because it tends to be like a secret school or
Mm-hmm.
chosen one. Are you? Looked like he was eating my hair again. But
The
I'm
dragon's
leaning over
acting
like
up.
this way so he can't get my hair. I know. Um. So yeah, I feel like I'm seeing a lot of that too. There's a lot of the dark academia and schools, and
Yeah.
I do feel like that's low fantasy because, like you said, it is in this world. Um, I think there's some out there that I would say are almost verging on high fantasy just because of the sheer amount of fantastical elements that are in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say Harry Potter is close to high fantasy just because she
Yeah.
has basically created a world within a world with
Mm-hmm.
this. Um,
Yeah.
but another low fantasy one that I've read is the Shannon Maguire's, both the Encrypted series and the October Day series. I would consider urban fantasy on both of those because it is in our world, but it's has that foundation of in one case mythological creatures, in another case magic.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's like Sherilyn Kenyon. All her stuff typically is in our world. So her Dark Hunter series, her Dream Hunter series, a lot of hers are, and a lot of them actually take place in Louisiana, at least for her Dark Hunter series. Like they talk, like specifically like French Quarter Bayou situation. Um, and then I have another one up here that way. PC and Kristen Cass, their series, Vampire Academy, of course, Twilight. All of these things could be considered low fantasy. Magic plays a part. There is mythological creatures. It is hidden. So all of these more popular book series tend to be low fantasy. Some could even be considered paranormal fantasy, depending on, I guess, the creatures being used.
yeah,
Either way, still categorized as fantasy, just a more niche genre. Um, and because of that, the world itself is more familiar to the reader. So there isn't a whole bunch of world building to do. It's more so building up a magic system, because there is still that magic foundation. But how magic works in low fantasy is going to be different per author. So there is that. So it is the part that is the world building will most likely be your magic system.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, it is not focused on world building most of the time. They're not building this gigantic, fantastic world for you to read about. They are more focused on character and plot. So you're going to see far more character development and just how they move through the plot and dealing with the elements that they're dealing with most of the time, magic, and the big bad, whoever that is. So yeah, you're not so much seeing this world being built and stuff like that. It's developing the magic system and your characters with the plot. So it is going to take more of a character driven, magic focused situation versus world building with low fantasy.
Yeah, and I mean, building up your magic system can definitely be a big part of the book, because especially if it's a core piece of what is happening with the story and the plot line. But the author is able to use familiar terms and familiar similes and metaphors so that it's easier for the reader to grasp versus trying to explain it in a whole new way, which is what you do in high fantasy. Because you don't have those familiarities that you have in lower urban fantasy, because you're in a whole new world.
Yeah.
Now Aladdin is stuck in my head.
That's fair. I mean, yeah, that happens. As soon as you said Aladdin, the
What would Aladdin
song.
be? Low fantasy?
Huh?
What would Aladdin
Aladdin?
be? Low fantasy?
Low fantasy. Because it's, I mean, technically Agrabah isn't a real place, but it's very much based off of, the, oh my gosh, Middle East. So
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't think of I wanted to say Midwest, and I'm like, that's not right. That
Nope.
Aladdin in the Midwest with their
wrong mid.
wrong mid.
Now I want to write that.
They're the salads that aren't salads in the Midwest.
Right.
But yeah, I would definitely say that would be like low fantasy. It's like the things you wouldn't think of to categorize as fantasy. They are.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
because sorry, I should think Sleeping Beauty would be high fantasy.
Oh yeah,
sure.
Sleeping Beauty would be high fantasy. Snow White. Yeah, kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. Anyway, I'll shut up.
Just start thinking of all the Disney movies. You're like, oh shit.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think there's anything else that would really differentiate them than what we said.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it's focused on the characters and the plot. So world building isn't such a necessity like it is in high fantasy.
Yeah. You could definitely take the lazier approach if you wanted to, which I will 100% say that is why mine is not high fantasy, because I was too lazy to build my own world. I was just like, oh.
She doesn't even want to read it, man.
Huh?
She doesn't even want to read it.
No, that's not fair. I like yours, and yours is high fantasy. I just don't like. It's not that I don't like it. It's just can be overwhelming and take a lot of time to read all the exposition. That it bogs down the story a little bit for me. But I get through it. I can
I'm
get
just
through
giving
it.
you shit.
I know. But like I said, I can read yours. Yours was never a problem to read, ever. So,
That is a big compliment. Thank you.
yes. I mean, I probably should try reading more high fantasy and seeing if it's a me thing or if it's like just that author that it's like I just don't vibe with their writing style.
I mean, I've said it before, I'll say it again. The Kristen Britton Green Rider series is high fantasy, and it is a lot more fast paced than Eye of the World. I'll tell you that for sure.
Okay.
It literally starts off with the guy dying in front of you and having to
Oh.
go on a chase. So,
Oh, okay. They're like action.
yeah, pretty much. There's like a single chapter of like some setup, and then the next chapter is just like dude dies in front of her, and she's like, "Well, shit."
Well, got to do something about that.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So
Um, I think did we talk about portals? I mean, I know we've mentioned it.
I think Portal Fantasy kind of does. To me, Portal Fantasy, depending on how often they come back in and out through the portals, I think that could be low or high fantasy because I would classify C.S. Lewis's Narnia, Narnia, right?
Yeah,
Narnia.
Narnia.
Yeah, I would classify that as high fantasy because while it did start out in our world, the 90% of the book takes place in Narnia.
Yeah.
The Robert Colville series that I was talking about, the Unicorn Chronicles, 90% of those books takes place in the world of Lester, which is not Earth. Um, the Shannon McGuire books, Wayward Children series, does not take place in our world. 90% of the So I think it depends on like, are they going back and forth through these portals or are they dropped into another world? I think it could be low or high fantasy. It just depends on how the author is handling the portal situation, in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think with that one, how long they're in it and how much world building they do would depend whether it's
Mm-hmm.
high or low fantasy. Because like in Narnia, like holy shit, like whole bunch of world building is done in that book. And they're there,
Well,
like you said, 90% of the time.
in my branded book that I'm writing, I would consider that high fantasy because I don't even start on Earth. I start with them literally going boom into this new world.
Yeah. And they completely different. Like, holy shoot. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So I
Yeah.
guess Portal Fantasy is kind of that middle ground where it could be either.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. Well,
And it gives a unique it gives a unique thing to the reader because the characters are from Earth, so they're able to use a lot of the same terminology to help you understand this new world. So I think it's a little more familiar to the reader because they can identify easier with these characters because they are from the same world. So it's kind of a neat compromise between the two. That's kind of why I wanted to write branded, just to get that experience of writing it.
yeah. And that makes sense because even when you are taking someone from our world and throwing them into another world, you do get to ask those, well, what the hell is going on questions without, okay, well, I can't just outright say that in a high fantasy. I have to be able to explain everything without, like you said, using those common terms where if you do have a portal fantasy and they are in a whole new world, you can have that relatability while also being able to for your characters to be like, what the fuck is going on? What is this? I don't understand. And then, fully explain things out. I guess in military term, that'd be like explaining it Barney style. But it takes the reader along with the characters and it gives them that relatable feeling.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. My brain's like processing, like, that does make sense. um,
I
so
read a lot
that,
of Portal fantasy, so I'm not surprised I'm writing one.
yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of the books that I have read in the past aren't necessarily portal fantasies, but they are essentially removing themselves from our world, going to a secret school or a secret whatever, where it's almost like they aren't really interacting with our world the same way. And then obviously I wrote technically a portal fantasy where they do go to different worlds. Um
That is true.
yeah. So that's fun.
That is fun.
Yeah. So that would
Alrighty.
bring us to the end of our episode and bring us to book reviews, which I have been sick all week and I've literally been going to bed at like 9:30 at night. So I have not had any time to read really. So I don't have a review for you this time. But I'm
You're
sure you
forgiven.
know. I'm
Yes,
just
I do.
trying to make it through the week.
That is fair. So my review is the book that I have not stopped talking about since it was released, and that is Kristen Britton's Falling in a Sea of Stars, which is the 8th book in the Green Rider series. And, well, one, I mean, the cover art, man. Look at
That's
that.
beautiful.
If you aren't watching this video, you need to just go look at the cover art. And the best part about it is it is directly tied to a scene in the book. Like, this is a scene in the book. I love it.
Aw.
Um, so Falling in a Sea of Stars continues to follow the story of Kerrigan Gladheaton, who was a merchant girl who met a dying messenger in the forest and ended up becoming a messenger for the king because of circumstances. And this one is following her. Honestly, the last book left us on a couple of cliffhangers, which is why it felt like 7 years when it was only 4.
Yeah.
So this book, I like, it's wrapping up the circumstances of what happened to Colonel Mapstone. It's wrapping up the consequences of that action happening with Colonel Mapstone, with Kerrigan having to step in to run her father's merchant clan as top of being a messenger for the king. It continues the love story between the king and Kerrigan. I'm trying to be kind of vague about this because I'm trying not to give too many spoilers for the whole series.
Yeah.
I will say I'm pretty sure that book 8 was originally a lot bigger, and they had her split the manuscript into books 8 and 9. So while this is a good book, I don't think it's one of the best books in this series because it feels like we're setting up the chessboard.
Okay.
We're setting up the targets that are going to be getting knocked down in the next book. There is a climax to the book. There is a resolution to the book. It just didn't hit really hard like it has in the past books, which isn't a bad thing. Like, I don't mind having books that are a setup like this. I know it's going to frustrate a lot of people because we don't know when the next book is coming out to kind of knock down all of those targets. But I liked it. I really enjoyed it. If you're a Green Rider fan, I think you'll enjoy it too. If you haven't read the Green Rider books, please don't jump in with this one. Start at the beginning. This is not a series that you can jump into the middle of because there is a lot going on. And because Kristen Britton makes sure that all of these little threads that you've been seeing in the previous books are continuing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't read these previous books and know these previous storylines, you're going to be really lost. And she does a good job of explaining it, but I also feel like I get it because I've been reading these books. I don't know if someone who hasn't been reading these books is going to understand what she's referencing back to those storylines. So, yeah, no, I gave it a 5 stars on Goodreads, and it's going up on my special Green Rider shelf. And yeah, definitely, if you're looking for a good high fantasy series about a strong female protagonist who literally will not take shit from anybody. And if you give her shit, she will punch you.
Oh, okay. Sold. No fucking around.
Um,
She will punch you.
I mean, she tries to be diplomatic, but you push her too far, man, and it's just gonna happen.
That's
Um,
funny.
but she also gives you so much comedy because this woman, she's a woman now. I can't say she's a girl anymore. She's in her mid-20s probably, I guess. She cannot throw things to save her life. Literally, she cannot throw things. Like one of the scenes in this book that was there, I'm sure purely for comedic value, is the weapons master was trying to teach her how to throw an axe. It ended up in the beam in the ceiling.
What the Yep, that's not where that was supposed to go.
Arms master is just like, I I give up. I'm not teaching you ranged weapons anymore, man.
No more throwing weapons.
She is an awesome melee fighter. Sword, staff, po- fire poker. Yes, she literally uses one as a weapon at one point.
Hey,
Um,
you gotta do what you gotta do.
great melee fighter. Sucks at ranged weapons, which I actually really love because it makes her a lot more relatable. That
Mm-hmm.
she's not perfect at everything, kind of thing. And it
Yeah.
does just give that comedic laugh during those heavy situations. Because, like, the one time she hits the target, she's like, yes! And then she turns around and sees someone looking
Success.
at her. She's like, I do that every time. He's like, no, you don't.
Why are you lying? No, you don't. That's funny.
So, yeah, that's my book review. I hate to go into too much detail on it because I don't want to do too many spoilers because it is still a relatively new book. It just came out.
Wasn't it like last month
God, when
or
did
like a
it come
few
out?
3 weeks ago?
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. It's been a few weeks, but I was looking to see if they had. No, it's just 2025. I'd have to look up September. So yeah, it
Okay.
just came out in September.
Yeah, so last
So
month.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, by the time you guys see this, it'll be 2 months almost.
yeah.
Um,
So hopefully, any spoilers that I gave have already been read.
I would say you didn't give any, but then again, I haven't read the series, so not entirely sure.
That's fair.
Um, so that brings us to the end of our episode. You can find us at writingwithwitches at gmail.com for our email. You could also find us at writingwithwitches.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and YouTube as Writing with Witches. And then you can find me at author.NicoleAutumn at all the aforementioned places. And then you can find me on my website. I have a newsletter, a Buy Me a Coffee, sometimes, maybe never stream. I don't know. I tried. It has not been happening recently. So yeah, that is where you can find me. Everything will be linked below in the link tree. Leona?
You can also find the Writing with Witches Discord server. We are on Discord constantly.
Yes, I
So
forgot about that.
drop us a message. We will probably answer you as long as Discord hasn't been notifying me that there's a message in our Discord, and it's really frustrating. So I'll come in and
Yeah.
there's like been a whole conversation that I missed, and it's like, I'm here, I swear.
Yeah, I sometimes Discord will do that and it just acts funny and wants to be a little butthead. Because there's times when even you have wrote me and I don't get a notification on my phone, on my computer. I'm
Mhm.
like, hello? This happened 3 hours ago.
So yeah, you can find me at Leona Urbanski, author Leona Urbanski, mainly on Facebook and Instagram, and also on my Substack. Like I said, I have been doing my best to release newsletters at least once a month. I'm hoping that we'll be able to release more art soon. There are also snippets from Fire Magic in every newsletter. And don't forget to check out our writingwithwitches.com at the end of every month because we do release short stories. Our last release was just October 31st, so and we're already to the mid of November, so we're going to be starting on that one as well.
Yep.
So,
Indeed.
yeah,
Um,
come for us learning to stay in our lane on what we write. I am the creepy and she is the cozy.
yeah. I tried. It was there in the beginning,
So did I.
but the end was like, nah, I don't think so.
Yeah,
So,
same.
yeah. Um, and next week we are going to be talking about audiobooks. So if you want to listen to that one, check us out next week. Thank you all for watching and or listening, and see you next time. Bye.
Bye bye.